Hi everyone, Janel here. I'm a functional nutritionist and doctor of natural medicine. This is my podcast where we talk about midlife wellness in the mountains. Today I sat down with my old friend, Dr. Kaisa Coppola, who owns the Harmony Wellness Clinic, to talk about ways stress impacts perimenopause. This topic is near and dear to both of our hearts, as learning to manage stress was a big part of both of our personal perimenopause journeys, as well as many of the women we work with. Kaisa shares her clinical brilliance with us and shares several practical and doable tricks to reduce cortisol and support fewer midlife symptoms. I was happy to learn, but not surprised, that Kaisa is also looking forward to upleveling in menopause. And I bet you'll never guess how the two of us originally met 30 years ago. Welcome, everybody, and welcome, Kaisa. I cannot believe we're sitting here on a computer together after all these years. So, Kaisa, we met when I was 19 on the rivers in Colorado, and where we both started river guiding. And I think I was trying to remember, I think our first trip was an interview trip that was a 10-day Dolores trip in the San Juans. Do you remember that?
And I remember thinking how much younger you were than me, and yet you were my favorite person there. And I was like, I'm going to make her be my friend.
I loved you from day one.
From day one. From day one.
And then we just did establish that we have not talked in at least probably 25 years.
In 25 years.
Yeah.
And here we are talking about women's health in the same field. It's amazing.
It's amazing. I know. It's so funny that we have taken different paths, but we essentially have the same specialty. So I love that.
I love that. I love it so much.
Thank you for being here. And I'm super excited to dig into our topic because it's such an important one for women in midlife to really understand if they want to feel their best and age their best. So clinically, I see a lot of women making so many changes in midlife that are great, like when hormones start to get wonky, but stress seems to be an elephant in the room. And it's the elephant in the room that I think people wait the longest to address. So, and that was me too. Do you kind of see this also?
Well, I always think as a mom, as a business owner, as women in our midlives, there's so many things we're trying to manage. We're trying to manage maybe a business. We're trying to manage work, our homes, our children, if we have them, our partners, if we have them. So it's like women kind of handle everything in their life. And so people say, take things off your plate, but oftentimes we can't. Like I always think, what can I take off my plate? So it's like the thing, sure, I'll go to bed early. Sure, I'll eat healthy. Sure, I'll make time to work out. But that's just adding more things to the plate to try to be healthy. So it's like this stress response that so many of us, it's like, how do we manage that? And that's going to affect the way we transition into perimenopause and menopause. Absolutely. So we don't talk about it or don't know because we don't know how to take those things off of our plate.
Right. We're like in survival mode a lot of the time because there really is so many realities in life that we have to juggle. Yeah, I think that's true. Okay, but let's get into why it is so important. I mean, it's always important, but then at midlife, when all of our hormones are starting to fluctuate and we're having to recalibrate, it's definitely even more important. So why?
So
what are a few reasons?
So we have a nervous system. We have a sympathetic and a parasympathetic nervous system. And when that needs to remain balanced. Well, in this time in our lives, it's not. We're usually in a little bit of that sympathetic overdrive, that fight or flight, just trying to get to everything that needs to be done. Well, when that cortisol rises, it's going to create a ton of inflammation. And when cortisol rises from the stress response that we're having, it's going to need to steal from other hormones to maintain that stress response. And when we're hitting perimenopause, and I mean, technically they're seeing progesterone levels go down, 35, 38 years old. So we're already losing some of our progesterone, but then we have a stress response, and through a roundabout way, it's going to steal from that progesterone that we're already losing. So when we go into these perimenopausal years with chronic stress, it's going to make it's going to create more inflammation and make the symptoms so much worse. So in effect, a stress response is going to steal from hormones we don't have to give. And then other hormones come up.
So our system is getting wobbly. And when we throw in that extra cortisol, it just makes everything wobblier. Is that the scientific way to describe it?
And something too that as humans, our bodies don't know the difference between being chased by the bear or even thinking about being chased by the bear. We're still going to release all of those stress hormones, cortisol, norepinephrine, adrenaline. So even being in an overthinking state or a worried state, it's going to create all of these stress hormones, which then are making your sex hormones more imbalanced. So as women, we tend to kind of overthink things. We tend to think about all the, what could go wrong. Oh my gosh, never mind, maybe my partner, my kids, this, that, work. So never mind being chased by an actual bear and sending out all these stress hormones. We could get there just by thinking about it, so then it creates more of this imbalance and more inflammation.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting that it's not even sometimes the stressor itself, but how we perceive the stressor. Right. We could have the same stressor as someone else, but it's how we are interpreting it and processing it that is also such a big factor.
Yeah, I tell people that all the time. Be so mindful of your thoughts. Don't believe them all. Like, it's just kind of, we go down these rabbit holes, and I always think you got to stay up on top. You can't believe all the thoughts. And that's a practice. That takes a while to practice that.
Yeah, that's great. And we'll come back to some good strategies for managing stress. But what about, do you find that when because progesterone is really typically the first hormone that decreases in perimenopause, do you find that with that decrease, people feel more anxiety and stress in general?
Right? Like that's, when they come into my office, and anxiety or irritability, those are symptoms of low progesterone. That kind of nighttime irritability that comes up, that you kind of just bark at your spouse or you bark at your kids. And, you always know there's a hormone piece when you feel like you're on the outside of you looking in, wow, like, I don't even understand what that person is going through, what just came out of my mouth. Like, you don't recognize yourself. That's hormonal. And that progesterone is anxiety, irritability. And that's for sure. That's the number one complaint that I know they probably need some help with that progesterone.
Yeah, I like that expression, to know if it's hormonal. It seems like you're outside of yourself.
You're outside.
Yeah, that's good. And that's so perimenopause, right? You're like, who is that person?
Whoa,
that was a different response. Yeah. So true.
You're apologizing to your family the next morning, like, oh my gosh, because you just can't help it sometimes. You're just irritable.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so then how about the whole stress and blood sugar topic even? Because with that decreasing estrogen, we respond differently to insulin and all the blood sugar gets wonkier, but then stress and blood sugar is so interconnected too, right? So it's the
pieces going into perimenopause, and especially menopause, because once we start losing those sex hormones, we really have to focus on the other cogs in the wheel, which is thyroid health, blood sugar, and adrenals. So those are the three cogs that we really have to nail in and balance as much as we can to make this transition, because it's our thyroid. I always see thyroid issues around, I don't always, but many people have thyroid issues that come up around perimenopause, menopause. Cortisol is always a game player in this. And then blood sugar. And blood sugar, I think we're all hearing more and more about ways to manage it. And I do think people are getting smarter and understanding that. But that's a huge part of my practice, is just counseling women how to stabilize their blood sugar, because that's one of the top three players that we really have to balance as we go into this phase.
Right. Yeah. And it's so interconnected with stress and cortisol. So it's like they all just impact each other.
They all impact. They're all, they have such a tight relationship in this endocrine system. And because they're then the top players, as we lose our ovarian reserves, they dance off of each other. So, when you're having a stress reaction, insulin's going to have to balance that out by going high or low, so they're absolutely strong players with it.
Yeah. And personally, when I was going through perimenopause, it was kind of easy. And then when it got towards the end, I'm in the waiting room, so I'm close to menopause. But
Okay.
when it got close to the end, when like things go crazy wonky, right? Like typically it's
Yeah.
towards like when they're all fluctuating a ton. That for me is when there was nothing that would help my sleep until I addressed my stress and my nervous system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And and so I do think we can ignore stress until some point.
Until we can't. I'm the same way. So I'm in the waiting room. I've never heard that term, and I love it because I am too. And I would have bragged like, "Oh, nailing this whole perimenopause. Come see me later. I got you. I am just nailing this whole transition," until I couldn't anymore. And then I got irritable. I was getting night sweats. I started realizing like, oh, it got me. And it was the two pieces for me. It was stress, just trying to do it all. And it was blood sugar for me. I wasn't eating
Yeah.
enough protein. I was kind of skipping meals because I was busy. And those were the two pieces that threw me off. And I realized like, oh no, because it's toward the end of that storm that if you're any piece that you're not managing is going to be the piece that makes you fall, and kind of fall apart.
Yeah.
And it was, so mine were the two, cortisol and blood sugar.
I love that we have the same. I mean, of course we do because of how we practice, but I love we have all the important things to address. But yeah, stress was the one that I tried to ignore the longest. And I think our world values being able to handle it all, right? Like our world values going, doing, achieving, managing, right? So
Well,
this is
I always
hard.
call it busy-itis. I also think, so first of all, women, we want to be recognized. We want to be seen. We want to get an A+ in every area. And I always tell women, go for a D, go for a C. Like you don't need to manage every single thing. And something has to give a little bit. You have to be willing to be flexible. But this whole busy-itis, this state of overwhelm, this need to put everybody else's needs in front of your own, because then you're overwhelmed and you're resentful and you're serving from a place of responsibility rather than capacity, so you have to take care of yourself first to then to have the capacity to even take care of those around you, and it's stuff that we hear, but I just think as women, we just want to get the A on everything. And there's a time in life that you just have to say, okay, first me. First, let me just take a deep breath here. And there are, little tools that I think a lot of us are learning of how to, okay, if I can't take things off my plate, then what can I do to help? Because it's going to get you in the end. So there has to be some adjustments with the way you handle it.
Yeah, there's really a reframe that's needed. And I think our hormones changing that's what they're asking for us to just really look at what our priorities are and if we're prioritizing ourselves, which what you said. And I love that you said you ask women to get a D in certain things. I love that. I tell people to consider the phrase good enough. Like good enough is so important. It's okay to be just good enough in certain things. Like
yeah, we don't have to be good in everything, right?
No.
I remember going through school. We had this thing that D means doctor. D
Yeah.
means we're fine.
Yes.
Nobody's gonna ask us our grades when we're in practice. So just get through and just learn the stuff that's important to you. And and it's like we just can't shine in every area. I think there's a lot of recognition that's put on that right now. And at least what I see with my patients is people are learning, to manage their stress a little bit better. But, with that comes, on that note, we see so many self-care practices, so we see the red light therapies, the plunging, the saunas, all the different ways to do it. But what I see with that also comes more to-dos, like, oh, I'm supposed to get my 20 minutes or 10 minutes of morning light, 20 minutes of morning meditation. I've got a cold plunge. I've got a 40 minutes of infrared sauna. Well, there's so many to-do lists that now you're still overwhelmed trying to check off all the boxes. And And I don't think that's the right answer either. It's like pick one or two a day that's going to help manage that stress rather than think you have to succeed at all of the to-dos. So I see it kind of backfire in some of my patients too.
I absolutely agree. And
Mhm.
there's just so much information out there
Yeah.
that even when people are trying to make effort to reduce their stress, it can be incredibly stressful.
Well, and on that note too, what I see with the cold plunging and the infrared saunas, which I'm a fan of for some people, those are intended to create a stress on your body. So your body learns how to handle that stress and becomes resilient toward that stress and manages it better and recovers better. But in my experience, most midlife women are way too stressed anyway. We have way too many things on our plate. So we're cold plunging and trying to do the 5 minutes instead of the 3 minutes at this ridiculous temperature to stress our bodies out when we don't need that practice. Our body actually needs more nurturing, more downtime, more snuggle time, we don't need a lot of these hermetic stressors because our bodies are already stressed and actually just need to recover and rest. So there's my 2 cents on that, because I see a lot of people trying to check off all those boxes, and I don't think it's necessary.
I think that's really such a great and important point to make, that in midlife, we're already super stressed. We become more sensitive to stress because of our changing hormones. We don't want as much stress because it depletes our hormones. So then what do? We know it's important.
Yeah. What do we do? That's a good question. So I do little mini things, and what I try to teach my patients are to do the many things. Now, my rule, like there are different things. I say 5-minute meditation, because my rule is I need to sit down for 5 minutes every morning. If I said 20 minutes, I might not sit down, but for 5 minutes, I'm going to put on some meditation music. I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to focus on my breath. And if 5 minutes works out and it feels so good, maybe I stay for 10, maybe I stay for 15. Some days I stay for 20, but I won't sit down if I'm trying to bite too much off, So 5-minute meditations is kind of my rule. And around that, I always say same time, same place, kind of let your body know that it's going to have these samenesses so you can sink into that meditation sooner. But I'm a mini bites of parasympathetic activity just to help the body handle that.
I agree. Do you wear an Oura ring?
I do.
Okay. I do too.
And I yell at me all the time.
Yeah. I don't think everyone has to wear an Oura ring, of course. Like they're not necessary. But one of the things that I have definitely learned for myself is exactly what you're saying, is that I was shocked at how much mini breaks changed my data on my Oura ring. Like I would do the classic 60-minute run, go do 60-minute run, take a shower and work and sit down and just be stressed all day. And it took me getting my Oura ring, and I'd see my heart rate and my resting heart rate later and all of these different things. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe my stress level when I saw it during the day. And then when I started taking those mini little breaks, it was shocking at how much that impacted me for the better.
Well, I first got this Oura ring because everybody started getting them. And I was like, well, that's kind of a cool tool. And I wanted to get it to show off because now everybody shares their screenshots of their sleep and this and that. And I was like, oh, I'm going to kill it and I'm going to show them what it's like. My sleep sucked, my resting heart rate, my heart rate variability. It was so embarrassing. And so what I've noticed now that I've had it and I've tracked it and I've been really trying to improve it is how much it improves with meditation, with keeping a constant sleep schedule, with taking a little magnesium and a little phosphatidylserine at night or whatever. I've been able to play with different natural sleep cocktails. I've been able to play with different things to improve it. And it's amazing how responsive my body is. I just didn't even know that I needed to do it,
or even I knew I was supposed to, but I thought I was doing enough.
Yeah.
Like I used to teach meditation. Somehow I thought that was enough, but like,
Oh,
no,
yeah, right.
it's not enough to
Or
have
I
done
think
it
I don't need to
once.
because I know not to take that seriously. I know not to think of thoughts that could be stressing me out, but I wasn't actively doing things. I just thought I know better, so my
Right.
body's not taking that on, you know?
Right. Right.
And my body was taking it on for sure.
Right.
Uh, there's another little tool that I actually got it from a book. So this is not my idea, but I love it. And it's different. It's called segments of intention. So another thing I do that made a huge difference in my aura ring was just segments of intention. So if you take, I say 3 minutes, kind of like the 5 minute meditation, you could do 1 minute, you could do 3 minutes. Between each activity that you do, between each segment of your day, do a little mini breathwork session or a little mini meditation, you know? So one thing I teach my patients is a box breath. And so maybe you take the count of 4. So you inhale for the count of 4, you hold for the count of 4, exhale for 4, and hold for 4. So your breath makes a box. And maybe you do that 4 times. And that's about a minute. So if you take, like, say, my kids are finally off to school, I'm about to get ready to go to work. So that's an in between segment. Then I'm going to just sit and do 4 rounds of box breaths and basically finish that part of my day and set my intentions for the next side of my day, you know? So even when I come home from work, I'll pull up into the driveway and take a little mini, a segment of just where it's like, okay, I take off my doctor hat. I kind of think, okay, how'd that section of my day go? Did all go well? Am I happy with it? Am I not happy with it? What bothered me from it? What felt good about it? And then before I put on my mom hat, kind of like, all right, what are my intentions for this next segment of my day? Am I, basically, where's my energy at? Let me touch base with it so I don't walk inside and then just chase everybody else's energy. So I can actually come in with a calm, loving, firm half the time because I have teenagers. So what's my intention for this next segment where I'm ready to be mom? I'm no longer doctor. I've already identified what happened at work today and I'm just acknowledged it. You don't have to work through any of it, just an acknowledgement of the things that showed up. And I think so many times when you can take 3 or 4 segments of intention throughout the day, then nighttime comes and your head's not spinning of all the things you didn't address or all the feelings you didn't get to process or all of the, maybe you're just maybe somebody pissed you off at work earlier and you didn't really get to acknowledge it. And it's not until nighttime that then you go down the rabbit holes of all the things you said, could have said, would have said, but if you took a segment of an intention after that moment, then you could have acknowledged it. So basically nighttime comes, you can sleep because you've already addressed feelings throughout the day. And I like that because it's seriously 1 to 3 minutes, just a few times a day to acknowledge where you're at, how the day is going, and check in and be present with yourself.
I think that is just such a wonderful tip because you're speaking into 2 really important things. One of them is that it's doable.
Yeah.
Like the most important part is that is doable. You are not saying you need 20 minutes of silence to meditate perfectly. This is very, very doable. And the second thing is it's sustainable and a habit. So like, I just love these 2 things. So you make it just part of your life. It's manageable.
It is easy. And now it's like, I've done it for so long that when something comes up that I notice, oh, that triggered me, or that either made me really happy or that upset me, then I can just say, all right, I'm going to breathe through that. That's a thing that I have to, pay attention to, So now in real time, I know, oh, give that a little attention. Don't just shove that around, and now I'm even learning to kind of speak up in those moments because I immediately notice it because I've taken time to address my feelings as the day goes on.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And I truly believe that perimenopause is an opportunity to just get to know ourselves better and to up level. Like I actually believe that. And like that menopause is like where I'm at. I'm like, this is what I've been waiting for. This is where I'm my truest version of myself. I don't have all those bullshit hormones fluctuating all the time, getting in the way. I
Yeah.
mean, they were great, but like
They did what they were supposed to do.
they
This
did.
is the time of our life, really. That's what I
Yes.
always tell people is you're not supposed to get through this the same person.
Right. And so what
You're
you're
not.
saying is those little steps are tangible tools to up level to this
Mhm.
better version of you.
We are up leveling. So many times we get sad that our bodies are changing, that, that our kids are growing up, that this whole new, like, who is my husband? Because or my partner, who is this person that I've raised kids with for so long? And now, or who am I if I'm not a mom, if I'm not a young woman who's able, all the different things we're supposed to change. This is when we get to become our true magical selves. I mean, we become the sages, right? Like we become the wise women who people want to hear wisdom from. This is our time. Like this is where it's at.
Yeah. Amen, girl. I can't
Yeah.
wait till we're on the other side soon.
Yeah.
And we're like, yes, we got here.
I definitely, and I also, because I'm in the middle of it, like, I'm just in the middle of it. I'm in the waiting room and I got sad. And I do think that's part of it too. I think you have to mourn what is no longer, right?
Yeah.
And I got sad, like, oh gosh, like my loose skin. I'm kind of seeing things that I hadn't seen. And but it's like those are rites of passage into this next phase where I really do think that's where magic happens, is in this next phase, because we're not caring for the people. We get to then serve a larger group. We're not caring for our immediates. We're serving from a place of purpose.
That small tip could really help people up level easier.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you said is important. There is sadness that we need to acknowledge, and there's letting go that has to happen.
Yeah,
for sure. But powering through it and stressing through it, I don't think is going to get us to reach that next level. And that's not even on a hormonal level. I just think we need to slow down in order for that up level to happen. So,
and women we don't do that well, do we? Like, I know some women I actually know one of my best friends is really good at slowing down. But I think it's not natural for us. I think we're so used to having a million things on our plates and trying to do well at all of them that it really is a place of surrender and just like, okay, I'm going to allow this next phase to come in.
Yeah, absolutely. So you already shared such a really powerful big one, but is there anything else that you help the women that you work with do to help process stress? I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of things you do.
I mean, there's a ton.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a ton, but okay. So the 5-minute meditation, even a 3-minute meditation, if that seems less daunting. So 3-minute to 5-minute meditation. I love the segments of intention that can be 1 minute and 3 to 5 times a day. Between each segment of your day, just acknowledge that segment and then set intentions for the next segment. I love grounding. So I'm a big fan of just go put your feet in the grass, go lean against a tree, go feet in the dirt, grass, lean against a tree, just get outside and basically look up and say thank you. Like, because you realize so much, whether it's a tree, a bird, like there's so much of nature that is there to support you and feed you and energetically dance with you. So grounding, I think, is so important. And even if it's for 10 seconds, and of course, 10, 20 minutes is great, but even just to go outside and put your feet in the grass and reset, touch a tree, lean against something and just reset. And I always say, look up and say, thank you. Another thing I love to do is get body work. I think now that's a treat. I get that. But just to have somebody touch your body, whether it's a massage, whether, I think it's so important to just connect with your body and have it just worked on, as our bodies, we hold so much in our bodies. And so technically I'm a chiropractor. And even when I just put my hands on people, I could just tell they're starved of touch. And we're go. So we're not in tune, but just to even once a month, to go get somebody to put their hands on you and give you a massage, whether it's chiropractic, cranial sacral, some type of touch therapy, even having your kids rub your shoulders is really important. Just to tune in with your body and your physical needs on that.
Yeah, those are both really powerful things to add. And I just heard this quote that I think you'll like. My Qigong teacher told me this. Our feet don't get anxious. So I love that about you said put grounding and putting your feet in the grass, because when I was in the heart of my biggest hormone fluctuations in perimenopause, I just felt anxious all the time and I could not. I felt like exactly what you said earlier. I felt like I was looking at myself and I was like, who is this anxious person? I've never been anxious. And I always wanted to ground. It's just what I craved. Like I needed to get outside and get my feet on the earth and like, yeah, like touch a tree. It did felt so good. And I loved that quote of your feet don't get anxious. And now I like go outside, I look and
I love that.
I love that too. So I'm going to add that with the grounding and touching a tree and all of that.
Yeah.
And then the body work. Yeah.
My personal easy favorite is salt. Whether you're drinking salt water, whether you're jumping into an ocean or taking salt baths.
Crying. How about crying?
Crying, right? Salt, it's so healing. And so, I always say take 2 cups of sea salt and just soak for 15 minutes if you can. Even if you don't have a bath and you don't love baths, take some sea salt into the shower and scrub your body with it. Put a pinch of sea salt in some lemon water in the morning. Some electrolytes these days have salt that I'm a huge fan of. Like our bodies need it. It's grounding. It's nourishing. Our nervous systems need that salt to kind of create that whole potassium sodium pump mechanism that needs to stay healthy in this time. So salt water baths, all of it. I just think it's so important and another easy tip to get in for grounding and for balance.
That's great. You've given us so many super tangible and doable things. What if you had to yell something from the mountaintop? We have those here. You come visit, you'll see. When you come visit, if you had to yell something from the mountaintop for everyone to understand, all women to understand about stress in perimenopause, what do you think it would be? What would you hope everyone understands about this?
I would say first you. First you cannot serve the way we are meant to serve, because I really think we are all here to serve. So let me get that straight. This is not a selfish response. I really think we're meant to figure out our gifts and serve from that place of our gifts. But if we're not taking care of ourselves, we are writing blank checks. We can't serve. So first you. So one thing I have my patients do is put, like, when you see a text come in, when your phone is ringing, when somebody asks you to do something, I have them put a hand on their heart, hand on their belly, and say, if I'm loving myself, is this a yes or a no? If I'm loving myself, is this a yes or a no? Am I putting you first or am I putting me first? Because if I'm supposed to serve from a place of magic, but I'm putting your needs ahead of mine, then I'm not going to be able to serve from a place of capacity. So first you have to take care of you before you can do the work you're supposed to do.
That's a beautiful tip. And it's, again, and I can tell you work clinically because again, that's another very doable and habit forming thing to add to your life. So, and then
really, like text or so many times the phone, you think, oh, okay, I'll stop doing what I'm doing, so this person knows that I care enough to pick up the phone. And it's no, for you have to check in with yourself before you say yes. And I say all these things because I'm the worst at them all too, but it really is a matter of, let me check in. And if I don't know how to say no, let me just ask if I can pause before I say yes, pause before you give the yes, if you're not comfortable saying no.
Yeah. And I imagine, choosing yourself first is something you have to practice. It's like a muscle that you have to exercise. And the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. And your practice you just gave us helps us to practice it and exercise the muscle of choosing you first. So I really love that. And I'm going to do it. And I'm going to think of you. I'm going to put my hand on my heart. And at first I'll think, oh, my dear friend Kaisa, who I love. And then what do I choose?
I love it.
Thank you,
But I
Kaisa.
try to hammer these things into my patients because, again, if they're doing all the things and taking my supplements and exercising and doing all the pieces, but yet they're still overdoing, there's not enough adrenal support in the world to kind of get them to that state of balance, right? So it really starts with managing the way we do life.
Yeah. And there's no healthy diet that you can outdo this. Like you
Yeah.
have to address your stress. You
Mhm.
have to address all of this. Or yeah, you just can't get super far. So anything else you want to mention before we end this
No, I
wonderful
think we
chat?
covered it. What a
I think we
wonderful
did.
Janel.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Thank you, Kaisa. Thank you so
Aw,
much. Love
yeah,
you. So
that
good to
was awesome.
see you.
Love you so much. Talk
Thank
soon.
you.
All right.
That's it for this week. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a comment and a review as that helps it reach more people. You can find me and the courses I teach, the Midlife Hormone Club and the Energy Club, online at Mountain Rebalance. I help midlife women understand their body and age better. If that sounds like you, please join my newsletter. And if there's a topic you'd like me to cover here or an expert you want me to have on, let me know. In the meantime, keep playing, and here's to aging our best.